It's time to get your head out of your ass and start creating a life of no regrets. Whether you want to lose weight, get rich, or manifest a hot threesome on the beach, you're gonna want to turn this up. This is Goals, Grit, and some woo-woo shit with your host, best-selling author and professional butt kicker, Una Duncan.
Hello, super healthy and hot listener. Yeah, I'm talking to you. Don't you look over your shoulder, see who I'm talking to? You're Molly Ringwald and 16 Candles going, who, me? And I'm Jake Ryan going, yeah, you. I mean, what would happen if you accepted that identity right now? If you're all like, duh, I'm healthy and hot, how would that change your posture right now, your mood? Or like substitute whatever identity you're working on. Maybe you know you're healthy and hot, but what you really want is to be a successful businesswoman that wears pencil skirts and high heels and doesn't look like a little kid dressed up in her mom's clothes. Or maybe you want to be a real estate mogul that provides affordable housing and also saves the old growth forest. Whatever it is you want, your goals are actually an identity that you want. And even more specifically, it's the feeling that you're going to have when you achieve and you embrace that identity. See, when people think of goals, they often picture like checking off items on a to-do list or running past the finish line at a race and the ribbons blinking across their chest. But goals aren't really about doing. They're about becoming the better version of you. See, it doesn't matter what your goal is. Your goal could be weight loss. It could be making $1 million. It could be winning an award, fixing up your house, whatever. It's not about actually having that thing. You are attracted to that thing because you recognize that achieving that thing would be something that the better version of you would do. And it's that recognition of your potential and that self-evolution that feels so good. And feeling good is the whole point. And I really mean that. The whole point of achieving any of your goals is just to feel good, to be happier. Like, picture this. If someone was to come up to you right now and hand you a suitcase with $30 million, and also in that suitcase, there's like a 26-inch waist and a hot lover and a Nobel Peace Prize. But the only caveat is that also in that case is guaranteed fucking misery for the rest of your life. I think that would be a hard pass from all of us. Feeling good is the point. And the only way to accomplish that ultimate goal of feeling good is to practice feeling good at every step of the journey, every step of the evolution. Otherwise, you could get to your goal, and if the only emotion that you've ever practiced is stress and striving and beating yourself up, you won't be able to access those good feelings at the end of the rainbow. It would be like trying to use a muscle that has completely atrophied from lack of use. You could get to the end of the rainbow, and instead of a pot of gold, it's like a pot of fucking stress and striving because that's all you've ever practiced. When you think about your goal and how it will feel to become that person, you need to practice that feeling right now. But here's where people get confused. Okay, so if happiness and feeling good are the whole point, what role does grit play? Like, how do I know when it's time to execute my grit and persevere through something really hard and uncomfortable in order to grow and evolve? And when should I practice feeling good and self-acceptance? Good question, right? So today I want to talk about good grit and bad grit. In psychology, this is really similar to the concepts of distress and eustress. Eustress spelled E-U stress. So eustress is the good stress, the like whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger kind of stress. It's, for example, it's the stress on your body of doing a really wicked hard workout and then allowing adequate recovery time so that the next time you hit that workout, you're even stronger. And by the way, that is called the super compensation cycle. And yes, dude, that can happen in one workout, provided you exercise at an appropriate intensity and you also recover. I talk all about that in episode 11, Embrace the Suck, if you want to check that out. Okay. Distress is the bad kind of stress. This is the kind of stress that like wears you down day after day until you feel like a shattered shell of a human and you are clinging to some small pleasure like a nightly glass of wine, like it's a fucking life raft in a sea of never-ending to-dos. We humans tend to think in terms of polarity. So some of us, they're like, ooh, stress is bad. I don't want to be stressed. Or sometimes we're conditioned with the opposite thinking, like no pain, no gain. So it's funny because I've noticed this polarity in my Masters of Fitness Awesomeness program. I noticed that there tends to be two archetypes in my clients. There's tigers and there's turtles. So turtles tend to avoid stress. They don't want to be pushed. They want things to stay comfortable. And their progress tends to be slow and steady. They move forward as they feel safe. These are the people that will watch the workout video in advance to make sure that it's something that they can do and that they have all the equipment and it's okay, I got it. I can do this. Tigers tend to be no pain, no gain. It's almost like they're addicted to the adrenaline rush at the high intensity situations. They're the ones that are always I always take the hardcore options in the videos, even if they haven't slept the night before. They'll grab a recipe and they'll start making it without even reading the whole thing first, because then they realize halfway through they don't have the ingredients. Okay. Tigers throw themselves into challenges and they look super successful until they burn out or they rebel, and then they start the cycle all over again. So tiger progress tends to be lurching 2 steps forward and then 1 step back. So listen, both archetypes have a very different relationship to stress, and both could do with recognizing that stress isn't always bad and it's not always good. The key is knowing the difference. I had a client once when I used to do in-home training, and she was very deconditioned. She rode a scooter everywhere because walking was really hard for her, that kind of thing. And her daughter hired me, and she said, if my mom doesn't start moving, she's going to die. And so for our first training session, I had her seated on a bench, and I just had her put her arms up over her head and, do a disco roll above her head. And almost immediately she was like, oh, it hurts. And I was like, oh, it hurts. And I'm looking at her shoulders and I'm looking at her face, and I don't think she's injured. But then I realized, oh, she just hates moving her body. That feeling of heat building up in her muscles, she calls that pain. And this can be so freaky for new trainers because, for example, if a client's doing a plank endurance test and they're like, oh, it hurts. Did they throw out their back, or are they just really working their core? Good stress, bad stress. So when I would train new trainers, this is how I taught them to distinguish between good pain and bad pain while exercising. So for example, good pain, you will almost always feel it in the muscle. Bad pain is usually, not always, but usually in the joint. Good pain is usually a steady build, where bad pain is usually a sudden thing. 1 minute you're fine, 1 minute you are not fine. Good pain will stop the minute you stop doing the movement, where bad pain will often continue to throb and hurt even after you're finished the movement. So that's with physical exercise, but how about in your life? How do you know when you're doing the good grit, the kind that's going to mold you and shape you and cause you to evolve to your next true potential and become the kind of person that can achieve those goals that you really want? And when is it the bad grit? The kind where you're just white knuckling your way through life, and you have those fantasies about getting a serious but not too serious sickness, just enough so you can lie in bed for a week, right? Here are the characteristics of good grit. So just like with physical exercise, the pain goes away. Let's say you're doing a big push to get a project done at work and the whole team is pulling an all-nighter. When the project is over, that intense period is over and everyone goes for celebration drinks and takes a couple of days off. It's over. Bad grit, it just fucking never ends. You pull an all-nighter and then you just know you got to do it again. And you actually don't know if it's ever going to stop. That is not good grit. That is poison. Or let's say you're in kind of a gritty period of your relationship. If that's happening, you should be able to say, we're having a rough time right now, but I know that when things are good, they're really good. If you can't honestly say that, if it feels like you can't remember the last time it didn't feel hard, the relationship might not be worth gritting through. With money, you might feel like you're hurting for cash because you just made an investment or you just paid back an expensive loan. I mean, it's painful, but theoretically, the investment should pay off and the loan is now gone. So that pain goes away. Good grit. If you just spent a lot of money, if you're hurting for cash because you just spent a lot of money and you feel like you're digging a hole that's getting deeper, that is not the good kind of financial pain. So good grit goes away. It is temporary. Second rule. After you go through a period of good stress, the kind of grit that makes you better, you should feel fucking awesome and alive. I always say, that you've exercised at the appropriate intensity if you feel energized at the end of your workout, not exhausted. Similarly, if you finish that gritty project at work that was all consuming for a while, or when you make up with your spouse, when you pay off that loan, you should feel freaking awesome, even if it was hard. For example, creating one of these podcast episodes, it takes a lot of work. But when I finish one and I submit it for publication, I'm like, yeah, it feels good. I'm so glad I did that. Versus after I spend the same amount of hours doing administration and farting around with Excel sheets or on customer support chat for a tech glitch on my website. Then I just feel like I just spent my time in the pit of despair of The Princess Bride and Count Rugen just sucked away 5 years of my life. Not good grit. So if you're going through a period of good grit, it should be finite and you should feel freaking awesome and so alive at the end of it. And finally, you should feel like this is so important. You should feel like you've moved the needle forward on a goal that you care about. So there's two factors there. One, you should feel like you moved the needle. If you feel like you just had another circular conversation with your spouse, or an endless meeting where fuck all got accomplished, or like you just checked off a box by doing your workout, but you're not seeing any results. Not good grit. Good grit moves stuff forward. It accomplishes something. And also, this is such an important distinction. You should feel like you've moved the needle forward towards the specific goal that you actually care about. So for example, let's say you freaking hate running. Every run feels like hell to you and you're just counting down the moments until it's done. Continuing to run is moving the needle towards you being a good runner. And if that's the goal, then great, you got to keep running. But if your goal is to get in shape, there are a million ways to do that. Or let's say you're gritting your way through a really bad patch in your relationship. The outcome of gritting your way through that is a better relationship with this person. And if you want that, then that is necessary and good grit. But if you just want to be partnered, or if you just don't want to be alone, it's not good grit. Or let's say you're gritting your teeth through really long days at work as a lawyer. The outcome of that is that one day, maybe you'll make partner at this firm. If that is the outcome that you want, then you've got to get to work. But if the outcome that you want is financial security or social status, oh my God, there's probably better ways. So good grit, just to review, the kind that makes you stronger, the kind that will force you to evolve, the good stress is finite. There's a moment and it will be over. It feels freaking awesome when you're done. And it moves the needle towards your specific goal that you actually care about. Bad grit, the bad kind of stress, it never goes away. It makes you feel de-energized and it makes you feel freaking dead inside. And you have that feeling of nothing ever happening. There's no needle being moved forward. And it's not even the grit that is necessary for your specific goals. So this is on my mind right now because I'm having this weird experience of having an Instagram post go like a little bit viral. I mean, viral for me, it's been shared like 1,000 times. And it's so weird because it's not a post that I thought was particularly genius or anything, which is totally how it goes sometimes. Like I'll publish something and I'm like, here you go, world, get a load of this. And it's like crickets. No one gives a fuck. And I'll post something like, ever notice the sky's blue? And everyone's like, oh my God, this. So my post that everyone's loving right now is a really simple tweet post that says, your job isn't to bully yourself into workouts that you hate. Your job is to find movement that you love and then do it consistently. And I'm a little surprised that this seems like a big fucking aha to people. I didn't realize how many people still think that their job is to bully themselves into doing stuff that they don't want to do. They think that is grit. That is not grit. That is fucking bullshit. Bullying yourself does not fit into any of the criteria of good stress. It's not finite. It is never ending. If you have a habit of beating yourself up about not doing your workouts, for example, you probably won't do your workouts because you've already decided that you hate them. And B, when you do your workout, you're just going to spend the whole time beating yourself up for not being as strong or as fast as you think you should be. And does any of that bullying make you feel energized and awesome? No, it doesn't. It makes you feel like shit and depleted. So is it moving the needle forward? Is it making you more likely to work out? No. And is it moving the needle forward towards you actually feeling good, which is the ultimate goal? Absolutely not. Bullying yourself to connect with someone isn't going to work. Bullying yourself to eat salads that you don't like is not going to work. Bullying yourself to work harder just won't work. Bullying yourself to do stuff you don't want to do is not grit, and it is not smart. As I said in the tweet, your job is to find movement that you love and then do it consistently. Finding movement that you love. Okay, so this takes some effort and some experimentation to figure out whether you like synchronized swimming or wrestling or acro yoga or whatever. Or it could be making the effort to find a way to love the movement that you're currently doing by adding music or friends or making it more intense or less intense, depending on whether you're a tiger or a turtle, or gamifying it or whatever turns you on, and figuring out what turns you on and how to make your habit fun so that you love it. That is real grit, because it's a work that no one else can do for you. You've got to do it yourself. And then you have to do it consistently. You got to do it when you think you don't have the time. You got to do it when you're freaking grumpy. You got to do it when it's totally inconvenient. You do it when you're not seeing results yet, but you know that you will. And the grit required there is not bullying yourself or forcing yourself. The grit is in watching your brain come up with all these fabulous excuses about why you don't have to do your habit today, and then recognizing those thoughts as BS and doing it anyway. The grit is having the self-compassion to know that you are not going to do it perfectly and do it anyway. The grit is knowing that when you're grumpy, working out is an act of self-care. It's not another duty that you need to perform and bully yourself to do. The grit to figure out what it takes for you to feel rewarded when you are not seeing obvious results yet, and then feeling that without needing external validation from a scale or a trainer or anything, that is good grit. That is the kind that will make you feel freaking amazing. And it definitely moves the needle towards your goal of having that identity that is earned by the kind of person who actually does these hard things, that actually likes doing these things. And more importantly, it's the kind of grit that moves the needle towards your real goal of being happier right now, in this moment, exactly as you are today. Yeah, you. Hey dude, thanks for listening. If you like this episode, make sure you're subscribed so you can get the next one. And by the way, if you rate and review this podcast, it really helps me get found by other people who need some goals, grit, and some woo-woo shit. And be sure to connect and DM me at Una Duncan on Instagram and let me know what you thought of the episode. Chat soon.